enchanté.
Hey world, you're listening to Globethotter, the pod that puts the lover in travel lover. I'm your host, Cassy Martinez, and each week I trade tales with a slew of amazing adventurers who, like me, kiss and tell. On today's episode, we're getting deep with guest Court Vox, a certified somatic sex educator and sex coach. Court dropped in for this episode all the way from Costa Rica, where he and a group of certified practitioners were hosting an ultra-luxe retreat for women all the way in the jungle. A true non-traditionalist when it comes to both work and play, Court has designed a life for himself where he gets to travel all over the world, helping his clients find the sweet spot in their sex lives. Oh, and did I mention he co-founded a line of sex toys? Yeah, this dude is the real deal. From experimenting with Tinder passport settings to trying on polyamory for size, today's episode goes there. Are you up for the ride? So welcome, Court. Welcome to Globethotter, the pod that puts the lover in travel lover. You guys listening, you're in for a really special treat. When Court enters your life, he leaves an impression and he leaves a mark, and I'm really excited.
Aww.
I'm really excited for you guys to meet him and just hear what he's up to. So Court is a somatic wellness coach, and he's got a deep expertise in how to connect the mind, spirit, and body through sensation and touch. Court works with all bodies and orientations, individuals, couples, you name it. His wisdom has also appeared in Cosmopolitan, Women's Health, BuzzFeed, Business Insider, and more. He is also a member of the World Association of Sex Coaches, so you know we're going to be getting into it today. Aside from that, he's the founder of his own practice called the Court Vox, and he's the co-founder of Squirm, a line of objects designed for sensory experiences, including one particular naughty object, aptly named the Scratch and Tickle, that I think you just have to see it to believe it. So that will be linked in the episode description. But in short, Court has become known for offering private, highly customized, exclusive experiences and travels extensively, hosting and teaching workshops for all bodies, genders, and orientations. Court, honestly, is a true globetrotter through and through, and I'm really excited to get into it. Where are you coming from today? Set the scene for us.
Well, first of all, thanks for that intros. I sometimes hear people introduce me, and especially you, and I think, wow, who is that? So thank you for that. I am coming to you from Quepos, Costa Rica, at the moment. And yeah, it's so beautiful here. It's peaceful. There's monkeys in the trees, iguanas on the ground. I'm in heaven.
Wow, that's amazing. Monkeys in the trees. I actually just came back from Costa Rica. We had a sliding doors moment.
As we do often.
As we often do, yes. I was just in Costa Rica for the new year. I spent the new year in a radically different way than I ever have before. Basically, I went to a retreat, which is your bread and butter. And trust me, I'm sipping that retreat Kool-Aid so heavy right now, because if you really want to transform yourself, meet other people that are like-minded, and just, lean into the experience, go to a freaking retreat. And there's no better place than Costa Rica. Oof.
I love that. I love that you're doing that. I love you that you are constantly on a growth path and kind of pushing yourself to experience new things and new places. And I think, it's the retreat business is interesting because I think especially young people, but all people are really looking for travel that has mindfulness to it. And so a retreat is a really great option because you're oftentimes going to different places, exotic places. You're getting to, like you said, be with people who are like-minded because they're there for similar reasons. They're attracted to the curriculum or the teacher. And you have a program that's set for you, right? So you're not having to worry about what you're having for breakfast or where you're going tomorrow. It's the curriculum is there, and usually there's space to have your own time. And so I think that's so cool that you're, creating travel for yourself that has to do with learning too.
Thank you. Yeah, I really do see the trend moving in that way. And I mean, it brings to mind as well, the offering that I'm going to be giving up from the Globetrotter side in the summer. Globetrotter is going to be taking folks to Portugal and some of the places that I've been, and creating a curriculum, if you call it, of my favorite haunts that I gathered up during my several solo trips to Lisbon, to Lagos. So I'm with it, and let's get into it, because the type of retreats that you host, that you take part in, they're particularly different. Tell us about the
Yes.
work, the kind of work that you're doing there.
So I am a somatic sex educator. I'm a somatic wellness coach. I'm a surrogate partner. At my core, I'm a sex and intimacy coach. And the types of retreats that I work for are really focused on being centered in your body, connecting to your somatic body, as well as your sexuality and how to connect with Eros. And those kind of like all go together. And so I'm actually here in Costa Rica working with private clients and a women's retreat from Back to the Body. And from a client perspective, what a Back to the Body retreat looks like is each day you get an hour and a half of body work. And that is sexological body work. Sexological body work is a particular type of body work where the recipient is an active participant in receiving. They're active receiving. So like a traditional therapeutic massage, you're kind of lying there and you are receiving in a really passive way. Sexological body work really asks you to be present and to stay aware. And how we do that is through breath and movement and sound and choice and voice. And oftentimes, sexological body work it doesn't have to, but it can include genital touch. So like a day in a retreat looks like receiving body work and then also having workshops throughout the day with other women. I am hosting my own men's retreat in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico in June. And that's going to be for LGBTQ men. And it will be a little bit similar, except each participant will get 2 hour-and-a-half sessions with sexological body workers. And then the rest of the time, we'll be doing group activities and touch activations, experimentations, and things like that, that really pull from BDSM, from Tantra, somatic sex education, and all the other kind of modalities of training and certifications that I have.
Wow, I love it. I saw you announce it on your Instagram today.
You
guys that are out there, definitely check it out. This retreat center that you guys have rented out, it just looks so luxe.
It's pretty luxe, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you guys get to know Court as well, like he does it luxe.
It's so funny because as I was looking for spaces, there's a lot of amazing retreat centers that are in kind of like desert landscapes and they're kind of old and run down. There's some places in New York and upstate New York that the terrain is absolutely stunning, but the accommodations are just kind of, like if you were like at a summer camp when you were 12. And look, I'm going to be 42 this month. And I know when I travel and when I do things, I like to be in places that are comfortable and beautiful. And so, why would I offer anything less to people coming to stay with me?
100%. And your vibe attracts your tribe, like getting into that abundance mindset, that's like, okay, I'm going to craft this curriculum. I'm going to craft this perfect retreat that like, if I saw that, I'd sign up for that. Like if I saw the Globethotter group trip, I'm like, yeah, me, So just the trusting of it as well. I'd love to hear for folks that are curious at home, what is a typical wall or barrier that folks come to you to overcome?
Oh, it's so many things. I think there's a lot of people that identify with low libido or low sex drive. I think a lot of times how that pans out, the diagnosis, if you will, is that they're just bored and they need new tools. They need new life kind of breathed into them. And so sometimes working with someone like myself or coming to a retreat is a great way to revive or enliven or a way to, come back to your body, which is the name of the women's retreat I work for. Men come to see me a lot for performance anxiety, coming with kind of unwanted desire or kind of wanting to lean into desire and be able to share that with partners they have. I work with a lot of people in exploring kink and exploring sensation. Again, I work a ton with movement and breath and sound and really being able to use your voice to ask for what you want and express your desire.
Yes.
So those are just like a few reasons people come. I also work with couples. And I think, some couples are coming because they're really lost and they need to find their way back to each other. And then we've worked with couples that are like loving their lives, loving their sex lives, and wanting just more tools to connect, more tools to grow together.
Love it. Thanks for sharing. Do you feel like hosting these types of experiences in these exotic, lush locations helps with that emotional opening that is required to do this deep kind of work?
Yeah, I think I think it's important to be out of your kind of traditional element. So, if you're used to living in the city in New York and everything's crazy and, at home you have cats and a child and a husband or, whatever it is that's, distracting you, it's great to get away. And also when you're like really focused on, your healing or your exploration or expression, whatever that looks like, you don't want to be worried about the place that you're staying in. You want to feel comfortable. You want to feel like you're cared for. And so that is a really big part of my aesthetic, as you know, is like creating not just wonderful and transformative curriculum, but hosting it in places that are inspiring and beautiful and, really push you to expand your knowing of what's possible. Also being able to see beauty in your surroundings. All those things are really important to me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm looking at your background right here. I just know that place smells good.
It does. I found these new, I forget the name, but they're Japanese, they're incense matches. And they smell so good. You light the match and you just let it burn. It burns for 10 minutes. I think it's called Hebe.
And it just sets a vibe.
It does. Sets a vibe. Get that like smoky amber scent in the room.
Oh, yeah. I can just picture it already. I love how you describe the locations that you host in and that you let this great opening kind of take place. They're like aphrodisiacs, and I think travel brings that to the table already. You're out of your loop. You're in this new amazing location and okay, you're already opening up. And then you just put that on steroids with the spiritual kind of work that you're doing too. Like, oof.
It's also like in a new place, there's a curiosity and a mystery, right? You don't quite know the space and it's, everything's kind of new. And that's kind of what my work is too. It's a little bit mysterious. It's new, very new for a lot of people. And so all of those elements combined really are kind of like the magic sauce.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I can definitely picture this. Like, I mean, some of the best moments I'm taking away from my New Year's in Costa Rica was the parts that couldn't be explicitly defined. The moment at New Year's when we all did a little bit of shrooms and we let in spirit. And I was like, okay, how do I explain this? But I'm feeling it,
Right.
And caveat for those listening, the person that I first ever did shrooms with was Court.
Oh my God. I was.
We're here. It's out.
Did you have a better experience this time?
Honestly, you guys, I can't say that it was a smooth journey when I did it with Court. It was unexpected. No, I knew what I was doing, but it was a rough ride, and that's the ego for you, right? But the second time around, it was definitely like we all did a sound bath together as it winded down to midnight. We did a microdose, which for those that are unfamiliar, it's literally the smallest amount of kind of shrooms that you can take. You don't trip. You're just kind of feeling good, feeling a nice vibe. And I was like, wow, I can't put on paper what's going on this week. Like so much spiritual stuff was going on. Like we did Temescal, we did hikes, we swam in waterfalls, we wrote in journals, we set intentions, like a lot of things that you've just got to get out of your loops to really go for,
Yeah. Sounds like a really great retreat you're on.
Oof, yeah. I mean, it was amazing. It was a retreat that was all about aligning the chakras and activating the voice. And for so many of us out there, like the work you were saying too is using your voice, and for your modality in the sensual, and that touches everything.
Well, it's kind of, everybody has desires. And sometimes it's really scary to speak them. It's also scary to ask for what you want. There's a lot of people that have issue with saying, I'd like for you to touch me here, or I like to be touched like this, or I don't like that, right? And it's so cultural and it's so much a part of our upbringing and, having desire. There's so much rooted in kind of the puritanical system that we are from in the United States and even the colonialist version of the West. And so, being able to say, I want this, or I don't like that, as easy and simple as it sounds, like sometimes I have a hard time asking for what I want because the answer might be no. And your partner might be like, no, I'm done. Like, you don't like what I'm doing, so I'm going to stop. And you don't want it to stop. You just want something to be different. So it's allowing space for people to practice that. And for some people, even to realize like how much they don't ask for what they want or how hard it is.
Yes, totally. And I love that what you're sharing too, like in the context of your retreats, it's in the explicitly kind of sensual arena, but like it really does touch everything. And like, I want the highest self Globetrotter as well to like hit those streets asking for what she wants or what they want. And when they feel in situations where maybe they're uncomfortable when they're traveling, like using that voice, like activating that voice. Like that's what it's all about. And you activate it in these streets, you can activate it in the bedroom, and you're going to be just living a more fulfilled, more content life.
Yeah. And, the thing with a lot of these modalities that are present in the world, they're all really wonderful. I mean, breath work, meditation, and so many of them completely disregard that we have genitals. I've been in meditations where they're doing body scans and they just completely skip over the fact that we have genitals. And it's kind of like this message to yourself that they're not there or that there's something wrong or they're not important. And same thing with traditional massage. It's like that we call it the donut massage, where everything else gets touched, everything else gets taken care of and massaged, and that is left with a cloth over it. And what does that say to you in like a subconscious way?
Yeah.
There's something wrong here. It's not to be shown. It's not to be touched. It's not to be seen. What's wrong with it? And so really, to look at this and acknowledge that our body is like one whole thing and our genitals are part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I work with so many different types of people, including like people who have everything. They have everything. They're very successful. They're very powerful in their work. They're very creative. And they've put so much of their erotic energy into their life, but they haven't been able to master the erotic in their sex. And so sometimes it's like connecting what you already have, looking at where you've placed your erotic energy in your life and going, now bring it here, bring it to your sex, bring it to your sexuality. And so in a lot of ways, like when we are secure in our sex, in our sexuality, in our erotic selves, it has this like trickle up effect, right? Where a lot of times when you're doing work that's cerebral or you're doing work that's like heart-based, it doesn't necessarily trickle down to the genitals or to the erotic space. And so that's why I'm so drawn to this work.
Right. Yeah. No, that's an amazing take. And I remember going to one of your first events back when I was living in Los Angeles, and we did that body scan. And you're like, we are not going to be ignoring the genitalia today. We're going to be putting our attention there.
Yeah. It's interesting, to have people notice. They kind of go, did he just say, hey, let's take notice of our genitals? It's like, and then there's a laughter that comes. And what is the laughter? Is it, a way to cope with the fact that you're very uncomfortable? And is laughter something that you use to cope and to hide feelings across the board? Chances are it probably is. So it's really like starting to gain an awareness of not just, sexual patterns, but of how they play out as patterns in your whole life.
For sure. Like as you talk about certain subjects, like for one, like what comes up for me in these topics is like, oh yeah, there's definitely been a practiced avoidance my whole life in that certain area. And it just becomes so normal. Like we don't talk about that area. We don't look at that area. We don't put that area on display, those kind of things. But I like the intersection of what we're talking about and combining with travel because, so much of like what we have been taught to hide at home, like after a couple of weeks doing our solo journey, we're like, F that doesn't need to be in the closet anymore. Let's pull it out. Let's explore that. Let's enjoy that.
I think that's you. That's you, Cassy.
100%.
100%.
Yeah. I would just like to talk about as well, like what are some of your bits of wisdom or tips you can share for folks? Because, we come back from those trips. We eventually do leave the retreat, that like little safe space we've curled up in or, that wild night we let ourselves indulge in Budapest. I'm not naming names, but it's me. But how can we marry that with our everyday life?
I think, first of all, it's possible to bring those moments back with you in meditation But I do think there is what we call retreat drop, where it's like, you've been at a retreat and you've experienced these really like heightened emotions. In our retreats, you're experiencing all these heightened pleasure experiences where all of your internal pharmacy is activated and you feel like $1 million. And then you go home and sometimes, there's an adjustment period that you're like, wait a minute. But I think when you go to some of these, I'm just going to use retreats, but when you go to a retreat, it's really taking some of those skills and tools that you've learned and like actually making them a practice instead of making these kind of insular experiences. And I would say that about travel too, of, taking things home with you, objects, buying things, supporting the economy, bringing things back. Every piece of jewelry that I'm wearing is from a different country. I've got Mexico, Costa Rica, Thailand, so really like taking obelisks that kind of remind you of those places. And I do think that there is an exploration to be had of self, of like, why am I this different person while I'm traveling? And why am I different at home? And kind of like understanding why you feel so free when you're away. And I think in some cases, I will always feel more free when I'm traveling in some ways. And then I also really love the comforts of my own home. But I think there's an exploration and an inquiry there.
Yeah, totally. Like you said, the retreat drop, there's definitely a post-trip depression. And I think we can help ourselves out by remaining curious, like you said. And sure, maybe you're not meeting a million new people every day, but like we can do the inner work. We can learn and discover ourselves a little bit more. Like you said, like maybe it is a couple journal entries of, okay, why were my Tinder settings different when I was in Berlin versus at home, for example? And really kind of navigating that question without shame,
Oh, absolutely. I think navigating all questions without shame is important. And I think, those voices come up. Even for me, they come up, the negative self-talk. You can talk back with them. Get your sassy self out.
Yep.
Be like, I'm not taking your shit today.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thanks for sharing that with us. Now, you guys may not have been able to guess based off what we're talking about, but Court and I actually met in a corporate office when he was one of my bosses. It was a past life for us both. But Court, let us in a bit on how you moved away from that 9-to-5 life and designed a life instead where travel and intimacy, two of your favorite things, is baked right in the center. What wisdom can our listeners take away from your story and apply to upgrading their own life right now?
Yeah. So I think, a lot of people kind of look at what I've done and they think, oh my God, he just popped up and this just all happened. But I really was really conscious of how I did this, and I did it over time. So like you said, I worked in corporate, and towards the end of our time there wasn't a lot for me to do, and I was not willing to quit. I wanted to be laid off, and so I waited. But to answer your question, I kind of decided what I wanted to do, and I studied for 2.5 years. So in that time, I studied somatic sex education. I studied to be a surrogate partner intern. And at the end of that 2 years, I was like, okay, I'm ready to take the jump. And maybe 2 weeks after I had made that decision, a woman named Pamela Madsen, who owns Back to the Body, reached out to me and said, I need new practitioners. And I was like, yeah, I'm in. And then this was like December 24th. And she said, do you want to come to Thailand? And I said, when is it? And she said, January 6th. And so I kind of, I took this leap of faith, and the universe kind of caught me in that way. I also made this intention that I wanted to travel and do the work that I do. So it was so appropriate to get that call from her when I got it. I also was prepared and ready. And so between the work that I do with Pamela and the work that I do on my own, I stay incredibly busy, and it's incredibly rewarding. I get to work with really incredible people and see transformations happen that are just miraculous. And I also get to do it in really beautiful spaces. So it's kind of I crafted my own life, and I'm living it.
Totally. And what I hear as well is that you weren't afraid of the apprenticing. Like, okay, I had my corporate job, but on the side, I was, learning how to be a somatic practitioner, this intern that you were describing. And that was outside of the work that you were already doing. Because I think that there is like the common misconception that like, I've got to quit and then I start my new thing.
Yeah, no, don't quit that job.
Not yet, honey.
Not yet, honey. It's not time.
I read this once in this book by one of the original Globethotters, Elizabeth Gilbert, who had written Eat, Pray, Love. She wrote another book that's really cool called Big Magic. And she talks a lot about how you should treat your creative endeavors in the beginning like an affair. And that felt so interesting to me. I was like, ooh, sensual talk here. Yeah. But what she says is that, like sneak away to do it, carve out time, like keep your 9 to 5 so you don't build this resentment that your creative passion isn't paying the bills quite yet. Let it be that fun little thing you've got on the side piece, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I look back on that time when I was studying and I was going up to Salt Spring Island, which is in Vancouver Island, and it's just so beautiful there. And I have really stunning memories of the people that I trained with, and I'm still friends with some of those people. But yeah, I think it's kind of like I said, to do it in a calculated way, and don't give up your bread and butter because it's what's supporting you. Also, like I love that, like have an affair with your kind of creative passions, because it doesn't always feel like a creative love affair, but most of the time it does. Most of the time it really does, and to be able to be enamored with what you do and get to do it is amazing.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like in the past year or since even starting Globetrotter, like just been very much on my end, like following what feels good. Like, oh, that decision, that's not settling right in my tummy. And that's somatic work. That's what you do, like that's your bread and butter. And being like, that decision doesn't feel too good in my stomach. But in the past, I'd be like, well, I already committed. It's like, well, you can get off the train.
Right.
Get off the train, take a pause, follow what feels good. And like you said, like the universe is going to meet you where you are. You're going to get that phone call. You're going to get that email, going to get that offer, and it's going to fall into place.
Yeah. And, the other thing was I felt ready. I felt ready and confident enough that I would get clients to say goodbye, right? And to say, I'm not going back to corporate. I'm going to be poor, right? I'm going to be poor for the first year or two or however long it takes, but I'm really committed to doing this. I will say I make more money now than I did in corporate. And like, I did not expect that at all. And so, yeah, don't give up.
Trust the process.
Trust the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Court, just by being your friend, by working under you, and you've always inspired me to walk my own walk and not do something just because everyone else does it or because it's just always, quote unquote, been that way. That perspective carries to the way that you do relationships as well, doesn't it? Would you mind sharing with us a bit about your dynamic with your partner and how it serves you both?
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to my partner today and I was telling him I was doing this podcast today. And I said, how do you feel about me, sharing our lives and our personal lives as a way of, maybe educating people or, as a learning tool? And he's so sweet. He said, if it helps one person, I'm really glad to share. So that felt good. So I am sharing today with consent. My partner and I have an open relationship. I won't get into like the nitty gritty of our dynamic or our agreements, but I'm not going to tell you that it was an easy decision. It's something that I've wanted from the beginning, and it was really clear going into the relationship that at some point I would want an open relationship. It didn't have to be now, right? Not on day one, but at some point I would ask for it. And so don't be surprised. Well, when it came to that time, maybe a year and a half, 2 years into our relationship, it was, it seemed like it was unexpected for him. It was not something he wanted. He struggled with it for a long time, and we went back and forth for a while. And I want to name that he's from like a traditional, conservative, religious Latino background, and so the idea of like sharing his man with anybody was just like a no. And so it was something that we really had to negotiate and take time. And now, we have a pretty decent way of communicating with each other. And, it's still a practice. It's still something that we practice. And practice compersion around, which is such a fantastic word. Compersion means finding joy and happiness in your partner's pleasure, specifically erotic or sexual pleasure. And so, I can come at his being with other people from a place of saying, like, I'm happy that while I'm away traveling, he's getting his needs met. Or if there's an area of his sexuality that I'm not able to meet him in, for example, I would love that he found somebody else that offers what I can't. And, potentially that person doesn't offer what I offer. And so there is a necessity to feel confident and safe enough in your attachment with each other that you can be okay with saying, yeah, I would like for you to experience sexual pleasure beyond me or with me or whatever that looks like.
How does someone listening right now know if it's right for them or begin to explore?
I think, if you're asking the question, am I poly or can my relationship be poly? I think you already answered your own question. The answer is yes. And yes, it's possible for you. And as many books as you read and as many lectures as you hear and the 5 cosmopolitan tips to having a poly relationship, you're gonna fumble. And there's going to be quite a few failures before you get it right. So I think, the one agreement you should make with your partner is we're going to fuck it up and we're going to stay. We're going to fuck it up and we're going to stay and we're going to figure it out. That's a commitment to stay in it. It's also an acknowledgement that it's not going to be perfect and that's okay.
Right.
And I think those are the only agreements you need to make, and then go do it. And then find out where your sticking points are. And I think polyamory is a really big exploration of self as well. Self-appreciation, self-worth, attachment issues. You really like working it out with your partner. And a poly or open relationship is just as hard as a monogamous one. Period.
I believe you. I definitely believe you. Do you have a steamy travel story you want to share?
Well, I've had 2 long-distance relationships. The first one was with a man that lived in Sweden and in Stockholm, and we did long distance for 2.5 years. And it was super romantic, being able to meet him in Stockholm. We met in Paris. He would come to Los Angeles and spend 3 weeks. And, I would take him to see Malibu and, all the places that you would take someone to experience LA. And then spending 3 weeks in Stockholm during the summer and like being out on the lakes and watching the sun set and rise within an hour or 2 was just sort of magical. And then I had a 2-year relationship where he had immigration issues. And so our relationship ended up being long distance, but we could never meet in the US. We met in Mexico, we met in Hong Kong, we met in Paris, we met in Italy, Ibiza. And it was just like, it really was the right time in my life because I was wanting to travel and I had time and I had money and I had love. And it was pretty incredible.
Love it. So I'm really curious, how does travel love come into play when you're living the polyamorous lifestyle?
Yeah, I think, one of our kind of agreements when we first started to be open was around travel. So we actually decided that when we were in town together, because I travel a lot, that we would just be with each other because we don't have a lot of time together. And so that was our initial agreement. And then when I traveled or when he traveled, that there was an open book. You were able to go do what you wanted. And so I think travel now, when we travel together, we sometimes play together and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we say, I'm going to go hook up with this person at 5. You're welcome to go do something also. But I think travel is great because you get to leave it there. It doesn't necessarily follow you home to your community or the place that you live. And so I think that it's a great option to be able to play while you're away. And then when you come home, like, have your own thing. But, that's again, very individualistic. Each person their own.
Yeah, totally, totally. It sounds like there's a lot of keeping certain encounters in the boxes that they should stay in.
I think, for us in the beginning, that was really helpful. But yeah, compartmentalizing things can be a great way to do it.
Totally. So, to quote a cheeky comment that you left on Globethotter's Instagram that made me smile, you said, a long distance relationship does have its perks. For example, it's always a fairy tale love affair. I'd love to hear your tips on staying in that fairy tale zone and avoiding getting your heart broken.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is let your heart break, because if you don't let it break and you don't stay, you will regret it later. But if your heart breaks, you'll live. You'll move through it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's better to have loved and been heartbroken than not. So I think, tips to like stay in it with your partner. I think, when you both have a willingness to grow together, a willingness to remain curious around each other, a willingness to like have separate lives and to keep bringing things to each other, like you're going to have a really long, beautiful life together because you're always going to be activated by one another.
I love that. So to wrap things up, Court, how can people keep up with you? What's up next?
Well, they can follow me on Instagram at Court Vox, my website, thebodyvox.com. And we didn't get to talk about it, but I'm also the co-founder of a toy company called Squirm. And that is everybodysquirm.com. And they are objects designed for sensory experiences. So definitely check those out.
Yes. Is there something he doesn't do, y'all? Well, thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you. I got to see the Costa Rican sunset in your window behind you. And thanks for sharing so much wisdom. I really do believe when we are connected to our bodies, when we're facing the things we put in the box and looking at them, we'll be better travelers, we'll be better humans, we'll be better lovers. I love it all. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Enchanté.
To keep up with Court and his adventures, follow him on Instagram at the Court Vox, along with his private practice at the Body Vox, both linked in the episode's description. Now, if you aren't already a member of the Globethotter Facebook group, I have just one question for you. What are you waiting for? Bursting with Globethotties from all over the world, it truly is a party over there. And you're invited. Our Facebook group is a private space to ask all your travel cues, swap stories, and meet up with other adventurers on your wavelength. The Facebook group is also the first to hear about any trips I've got coming up and how you can join me. So, to join the squad, all you gotta do is search Globethotter Travel Gang on Facebook. The link is also in this episode's description. Let's wrap things up with a juicy voicemail straight off the Globethotter hotline. Today's steamy story comes from a listener I'll call A. A romance sparked during study abroad, this story has it all. From Dutch hot tubs to road tripping across Europe and lots of PDA. You're gonna wanna take a listen. And maybe take a cold shower after.
So I met some very handsome German boy when I was studying abroad in Spain, and we crossed paths a few times, but ever since the pandemic, we were just, staying in touch and reminiscing on all the times we could have had together, but didn't. So we stayed in touch, and I spent the summer in Europe, and we met up for a 5-day-long road trip in Denmark and Germany. And then he wanted to have another road trip, so we went to Spain and Portugal. And there, it was just so steamy. We were, camping and in Dutch hot tubs together, just being so naughty in every country. And I'm certain that we broke a few laws with our PDA and everything. But it was just so steamy and so lovely and so romantic. And now we've just decided to go our separate ways. And I'm so happy for those 16 and 17 days in total of just, just rawness and just naughtiness all over. I'm so glad that I didn't get caught by some international police force and thrown in jail. But it was well worth it, let me tell you.
Enchanté. Inspired to share your own epic travel story on the Globethotter hotline? All you gotta do is go to speakpipe.com/Globethotter to leave an up to 90-second voicemail detailing your travel tale. A quickie, if you will. Want to stay anonymous? No name is required to leave a voicemail. Till next time, I'm Cassy Martinez.